I'm losing my train of thought. Where were we at?
Hi, welcome to Kenny's Bookshop. We're delighted to be here for the launch of Inner Shoes by Erin. It's International Day of the Girl, which is very apt for this. And we're really happy to have you here. So thanks a million for coming in.
I am really excited to be here about this gorgeous book that New Ireland came out with me.
So I'm just wondering, the first thing is, how did this start? How did the Facebook page start? And did you know at the beginning with the first story that you had something really intriguing and different?
Well, I started the Facebook. The book is about the Facebook page. It's an anthology on the 32 of the stories from the page, and the page started early January 2018, so 5 months before the referendum. And I think we only got the referendum, knew that we were going to have a referendum 2 months before that.
Yeah, date,
so
yeah.
weeks before, just to have the date. Yeah. So the idea came to me when I was canvassing in my small town in Loughrea, and it's quite, I suppose, conservative. And talking with a man on the street, it was my first time ever really being on the streets, talking to people about the abortion referendum. And he wasn't sure how he was going to vote. He was kind of annoyed being there, that we were there. He wanted to know, like, why are we there?
Yeah.
And so when I was talking about it, he was saying, like, well, I don't agree with this and people die, whatever. And I found out that he had daughters and asked him, I went through various scenarios of other women who I'd known who had had abortions and the types of abortions they had and the kind of care that they should have. And he started to kind of, no, I agree with that one.
Yeah.
I like, that one's okay, and she should definitely get care down here, and oh yeah, she should definitely be able to go to her doctor, and I would want that for my daughter. So that meant I could just see it all turning.
Evolving.
Yeah. And so I felt like, okay, that's good. Okay, I was just like, okay, you're walking in her shoes. There was a Facebook group that I was part of. It was a mothering Facebook group that was really, really important to me. And a lot of the women in there, not a lot, some of the women in there had to travel for abortions. So they were my first people to go, I have this idea.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with me telling your story anonymously and putting it with a pair of shoes? And that was that. Like, that went up. And as an artist, I really, really love the details of people's lives, and I really love finding the beauty in mundane, absolute mundane, especially in motherhood. Dirty nappies on the floor and a sick cloth on her shoulder and stuff. I really, really love it. I think it's so beautiful. And seeing a pair of a woman's shoes, and you can decide who she is based on what type of shoes she has.
Yeah.
You decide what socioeconomic class she's in, you decide a lot of things. And then to allow that to play with what we already decide about what kind of a woman has an abortion. Talking about not being able to vote in Ireland, I think that as an American and being white and being an American, that you're not considered an immigrant. An immigrant is...
Or a different class of immigrants.
Yeah, but immigrant sounds like, in some realms it can be used as a dirty word. And I think that for me it was really hard. Like, I wouldn't take away the space for somebody who is coming from a different place, different.
Well, certainly growing up, the only foreigners in Ireland would have been American or English, or
right?
British.
Yeah.
So,
but they get a different class of getting to be expats.
As such, yeah.
And I don't have the same rights as Irish people, and so knowing that I could do something, and I needed a vote, but also of all the people who don't have a vote as well. All these other women who have suffered and are suffering worse than I am. I wasn't suffering, but women in direct provision, or Savita and the other woman. I can't even think of her name. It's like being in birth gatherings and having Indian women, talking with Indian women about their experiences in the hospitals and what kind of treatment they were given, compared to how maybe I would be treated, or even just sitting there and seeing how somebody would call for a woman who obviously has a foreign name and how she would be treated. I could just see how she'd be treated differently than when I would be called up and assumed that I'm Irish or I'm white or whatever,
Yeah.
So one part of it was making sure that I let people know there's a lot of people who can't vote. And so if you think that this isn't about you, if you think, especially for men who thought, well, this is a woman's issue and this isn't for me to vote on, or if they didn't feel strongly enough about it, to make them feel like your vote really, really matters to somebody else, and could you please just take a moment and just think about how this could impact them.
In her shoes again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was interesting because then when the page started, it really took off, and when we started having loads and loads of stories and loads of commenters and people following, we started getting private messages from people saying, I was going to be voting no. I was absolutely, there was nothing that was going to convince me to vote no, to vote otherwise. But then I started reading these stories, and I don't see how there's any other way for me to vote but to vote yes. And that was really incredible. Like, for somebody to admit that they were not going to, that there was nothing, but that their minds were open to what was actually happening.
And that comes back to, I suppose, an awful like this, and I was saying to you earlier, like it kind of falls into a new genre, for want of a better way of putting it, of kind of the hidden history of women's stories that were always being lived, but not necessarily written down and not necessarily talked about and told about. And a lot of people might have been anti-abortion without having thought about it because they didn't have to, it was never presented to them.
Right.
Whereas this does, you know, it literally it puts it front and center, and it goes, this is what people's lives are, this is what their experiences are, and it's real.
It makes it easier for people to talk about, you know.
But that's it. It makes it part of normal life, you know, because it is part of normal life, even if people never realized it because it wasn't there. I mean, you know, and that's why I say it's part of a genre of writing, and it's largely women's writing, where people are rescuing the normal and the mundane and the kind of the minutiae of life, which is often, and particularly let's say in household life, it has never been chronicled really, and certainly not at the level it has been in the recent past, and it makes it front and center, and people have to kind of...
Well, I think that means that when you're reading things, when you're learning about things, because you don't see it, you forget to look for it sometimes. Yeah. And then when you do find something that's got a woman's voice or her experience, we're all latching onto it because we've never heard of this before, and why hasn't it been written before? They have been written before and nobody's paid attention, or they have been written and nobody's published it, or women have had to talk about these things quietly and they've been passed generation to generation, and that's the only way it's been safe. And like, you know, talking about abortion stories, some of the stories that were being sent to me were illegal. You know, if they, you know, a lot of women would have said, can I send my story? Do you promise that it's going to be anonymous, to, you know, that they were protected, because it was criminalized. It could be criminalized in Ireland at that time. And there hadn't been a case in Ireland that had been taken, but in Northern Ireland it was. Yeah. And that was a life sentence in prison of 14 years. So certainly the person who was telling me their story could have
it would have been in fear for their liberty.
Theirs, and also I might be implicated in that as well, because I'm maybe helping them to find where they can go, or
and I suppose people are worried there was a stigma around it as well.
Absolutely.
You know, and they're worried about what their father, mother, brother, sister might think, or did you find it difficult telling your own story?
Writing my story was really healing, really helpful for me to do. Going back through all the months, trying to go back through my journals and what we had done through repeal was really traumatic. I think it was bringing up a lot of trauma of, oh my God, we actually did all this in this short amount of time. Yeah. But also, like, I was doing In Her Shoes, the only way I was able to do it was because I was doing it for my mother. I was doing it with the grief of the loss of her, of my best friend. Yeah. And wanting to do something big and something important, and feeling like I needed to be part of something bigger than me for her. And it was also telling my story. I mean, like, I love talking about, I think it's really important for us to talk about taboo things, to talk about our miscarriages, to talk about grief. Grief makes people really uncomfortable. And I think it's something so important for us to be having conversations about.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, there's a real amazing sense of community through it. I mean, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. Like, and community activism, but the two of them as separate things. I mean, like, to go back again to the internet, like, but I mean, a lot of it, obviously, In Her Shoes is a Facebook page, but it's not just that. It's you're very open. Your friends come through the internet initially, and your husband, and it's a great community. It seems, and it brought you along, and it lifted you up, but similarly, it helped mobilize the activism.
Yeah, it's like communities online right now. I think that's what's so incredible right now is that we're able to utilize that. But repeal brought a lot of people together. Repeal brought a lot of people who might not have ever known each other together. Yeah. I think that one of the things that with writing the book and with the stories, there's so many layers of circles throughout it, of women's circles, of women being together and how we talk to each other, of healing ourselves and each other, of the friendships that we make, of the generational parts of it, of our mothers and our grandmothers, and then these children who are there at the table with us when we're having these conversations. I got the feeling that after I lost my mother and after feeling like losing my home and my country, that being here and kind of feeling like, okay, where am I going? Being held by Irish people and this group, these people, Galway's for Choice and all the repealers, the people who were supportive of me during it, felt like such a coming home and such a good place to be. Yeah, like such a massive belonging. When I was asked the day before we voted, the Home to Vote people had asked if they could pay for my citizenship.
Oh wow!
And that was incredible. It was being asked to be a sister. I actually, you're forever a blow-in.
Of course,
But it made it feel like I was wanted here and that I have a place here, and we made history together.
Yeah.
And Irish women are incredible. I mean, Irish people are incredible, but Irish women are powerful.
Absolutely.
And really cool and so inspiring. And the more and more I'm digging, the more and more people I'm meeting, the more I'm finding out. And I want to know everything, I want to know all these people. They're so, and underneath all of it, underneath all this quiet, we don't talk about that. There's some major power.
Well, that's it. I mean, you're talking about taboos, this would have been a taboo. This book would never have been published 10 years ago.
Exactly,
And here we are talking about it. And like I said, I think it fits really neatly into a big growing movement of, things that are in other areas, largely of women's lives that were never talked about, were never told about, and are being told now. So let's hope all those taboos are smashed away.
We are getting rid of all of it, releasing it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. You can get a copy of In Her Shoes, November the 8th, in all good bookstores in Ireland. We're here in Kenny's, which is it the oldest bookstore? One of the oldest?
It's the oldest online bookstore in the world.
Oldest online bookstore in the world. Mm-hmm. So you can get one in Kenny's bookstore in Galway, and also from New Ireland Books. And every purchase from New Ireland Books of In Her Shoes, €1 goes to Women's Aid Ireland. I didn't know what I was doing when I started In Her Shoes, but I think that it's important to know that we don't have to know what we're doing to make a difference in the world around us. That when we see something that needs to be done, that we just take the opportunity and do it. If the whole, if not you, who, and if not now, when. So if you have an idea of when something is not right, of just taking that opportunity and just going, okay, I can do this. Having that idea and going forward with it. Our stories are so important, and doing something small is making any impact.